Well, welcome back to our study of the book of Joshua. We've entitled this book, Be Strong and of Good Courage. It's a phrase that the Lord shared with Moses, mostly with Joshua, but Moses shared that with Joshua also, and Joshua passed that on to his people. And in the day we live today, may I say, be strong and of good courage. The Lord is still on the throne. He cares about his people as he did the children of Israel. We are already to chapter 15. The land has pretty much been conquered, and the land is going to be divided up. And so today we're looking at the inheritance of Judah. All right, so I need to tell you a couple things before you turn this off. And don't go any further. I'm not going to read all of the names of the cities and the tribal heads, etc., but I have highlighted some. And I would ask you can pause and just read over the cities and see how some of them stick out and how they relate later on in Bible times and different characters. Different people have come by. The other thing is I have a short slideshow right in the middle. And some pictures of Judah. So I'm going to try to do that with each of the areas. So without saying much more, let's move on. The outline we're using, we're already down into the second half of the book. And these are the allocations for 5 tribes and Caleb. We saw Caleb last week. And so Judah is the first one on the west side of the Jordan River, and that's where all of the 9.5 tribes are that will have their allocations, and we'll look at them. Then there's breakouts. There's the cities of refuge and cities that will be given to the Levites as they scatter them out throughout the nation. And I'll say more about the Levites when we get to them again. So today is all about Judah. And in our map, and this is how the breakout goes, over on the east side, we have the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh. Those have already been distributed at the front end of these chapters in the latter half, 13 and 14. And so that's just a reminder. And now we've moved over onto the other side. With Caleb, we know that he was given in chapter 14. We know Caleb is in the land of Judah and in the inheritance of that area, but he was given specific areas just for himself. And then keep in mind Jebus, right at the very top, right before it goes to Benjamin. That is the name of the city that Judah will inherit. But it also becomes something else. That's Jerusalem down the road when David shows up on the scene. But we're still a bit of time away from him. All right, this is all about Judah in 1415 before Christ. This then was the lot of the tribe of the children of Judah by their families, even to the border of Edom, the wilderness of Zin. Southward was the uttermost part of the south coast. Judah means praised. That just simply means what it is. And so I did not highlight this, but I will later on, but it gives us basically geographical borders here. The border of Edom would have been to the Jordan River, and we'll see the map again of them in a few minutes. And their south border was from the shore of the Salt Sea, that's the Dead Sea, from the bay that looks southward. And it went out to the south side of Maaleh-acrabbim and passed along to Zin, and ascended up on the south side into Kadesh-barnea and passed along to Hezron and went up to Adar and fetched a compass to Karkaa. Okay, once again, we can see the border we've been described and how far it went down to the wilderness of Zin. And then it's going to come up along the Philistine strongholds and across the north. From thence it passed towards Azmon and went out into the river of Egypt, and the goings out of that coast were at the sea, Mediterranean Sea. This shall be your south coast. And the east border was the Salt Sea, even unto the end of Jordan, and their border in the north quarter was from the bay of the sea to the uttermost part of Jordan. And the border went up to Bethhogla and passed along by the north of Betharabah, and the border went up to the stone of Bohan, the son of Reuben. The border went up toward Debir from the valley of Achor, and so northward, looking toward Gilgal. That's the headquarters right now. That's the capital of Israel. That is before the going up to Adummim, which is on the south side of the river, and the border passed toward the waters of Enshemesh, and the goings out thereof were at Enrogel. Hang in there with me. And the border went up by the valley of the son of Hinnom unto the south side of the Jebusite, the same as Jerusalem, and the border went up to the top of the mountain that lies before the valley of Hinnom westward, which is at the end of the valley of the giants northward. Hinnom means lamentation, and you might keep in mind here, I underlined Hinnom. I wish I'd color-coded it for you. When this is all up in the Jerusalem area, and there was the valley of the son of Hinnom. Eventually, it just became called the Valley of Hinnom, and this is where this became the garbage dump of Jerusalem. When the idols and the high places were cast down, and when there was revival in the land, they took all their idols and they threw them over into the valley. It was downwind, and then they set it all afire and burned it. And what people would do to cover up their past just remembrance of those idols, because some of them were stone but broken up, they made it their garbage dump. And so it continued. And when Jesus talked about hell and not to go there, he referenced Hinnom, because he said hell is continual burning, and Hinnom, the garbage dump, was always had something smoldering there. And it was constantly burning. And what a great illustration. And way back here, the scripture mentions that. And the border was drawn from the top of the hill unto the fountain of the water of Nephtoah, and went out to the cities of Mount Ephron. And the border was drawn to Baalah, which is Kirjathjearim. And the border compassed from Baalah westward unto Mount Seir, and passed along unto the side of Mount Jearim, which is Chesalon, on the north side, and went down to Bethshemesh, and passed on to Timnah. And the border went out into the side of Ekron, northward, and the border was drawn to Shikron, and passed along to Mount Baalah. Look at Baal there, Ekron, big battle spot there, and went out to Jabneel, and the goings out of the border were at the sea. And the west border was to the great sea, Mediterranean, and the coast thereof. This is the coast of the children of Judah, round about according to their families. And unto Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, he gave a part among the children of Judah, according to the commandment of the Lord to Joshua, even the city of Arba, the father of Anak, which city is Hebron. We'll see that again in just a couple slides here. And Caleb drove thence the three sons of Anak, Sheshai, Ahiman, and Talmai, the children of Anak. These were giants. This was how far over from the coast the Philistines had infiltrated and built their land. And he went up thence to the inhabitants of Debir, and the name of Debir before was Kirjath-sepher. All right, so you see Hebron, that was given to Caleb, and the mountain that was there with him. And Caleb said, He that smites Kirjathjearim and takes it, to him will I give Asha, my daughter, to wife. And Othniel, the son of Kenaz, the brother of Caleb, took it, and he gave him Asha, his daughter, to wife. And it came to pass, as she came in unto him, that she moved him to ask of her father a field. And she lighted off her ass, and Caleb said unto her, What do you want? Who answered, Give me a blessing, for you have given me a south land. Give me also springs of water. And he gave her the upper springs and the nether springs, or the springs that were nearby. So this is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Judah, according to their families. Now, as promised, right in the middle here, let me just show you some of the land of Judah. Judah had what would be called the wilderness, which was the Negev, or a desert type area. Although grass would grow and goats and sheep could, their herds could come this direction certain times of the year and find something to eat. This is the wilderness areas where Jesus was tempted. But at the same time, the wilderness, and you can see the wadi, see the dried up stream. Grandma would call it a creek bed. But when it would rain, it would flood. And this is some of Judah. Do you see the road? This is called the Jericho Road. Not for cars, but walking. I guess cars could get on it, but it might not do well. So Judah can be a very dry, dead area, but do you see the body of water over there? It's the Dead Sea. It's really low. But it can be a very green area. It can be a land of forests and of farming. Talking about springs made by Caleb's daughter. This is what they would look like. Here's the Dead Sea. More of the Dead Sea from Masada. More springs. And some of the land, this is around Caleb's request in Hebron, some of his land. It's not his any longer, but could be descendants are there. And some more. All right, now here's what I encourage you to do. If you want to read and stop and look at some of these things, I will give a couple seconds per slide, but I'm only going to comment as we go along. Just to say a couple things that'll give you perspective on everything. And the uttermost cities of the tribe of the children of Judah toward the coast of Edom southward. Right, so here's a listing of them. You can get a good Bible atlas, and they would list these for you. Some of these names were places that Joshua and Israel fought and took, all of them, actually. But see, these are the cities that they gave up, that they didn't have to go destroy, and the people fled them. They left, and so they were intact and could be moved into. Now we get down here, and all the cities are 20 and 9 with their villages. So these are all descendants and of the tribe of Judah, but these are the chief heads are being given these cities. And the children of Israel are moving into them, and then of course their families would grow and expand and make greater cities. Here's a group of people that got 14 cities, well, the tribal heads. 16 cities. 9. Ekron comes to mind. That just really, 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 really tough. And I'll tell you why. were over into the Philistine strongholds, or the former ones at this time. Look down here in verse 47. Ashdod, Gaza, over towards Egypt. We've heard of the land of Goshen. There's 11 cities with that tribal chief and his children. There's 9 more cities. There's Carmel. We're going up north, the plains of Jezreel. Megiddo is there. It's on the plains of Jezreel that the Battle of Armageddon is fought in part. 10 cities and 6 villages. Here's 2 more. And then the wilderness area we talked about, sort of desert area. These people would tend to be shepherds. As for the Jebusites, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the children of Judah could not drive them out, but the Jebusites dwell with the children of Judah at Jerusalem unto this day. And so what about Jebus and the Jebusites, which is Jerusalem? But who was Jebus? That's a guy's name. So around in this area, here's some issues and some background about Jebus and the Jebusites. They are definitely descendants from Ham through Canaan, which was one of Ham's sons. And Ham and his people went from basically after the flood, they were commanded to go straight basically west. Well, they didn't necessarily do that. They hung around, and God took the Tower of Babel to change the languages and then move people where they needed to go. They obeyed. And so you read about this in Genesis 10. They were one of the Amorite tribes under God's judgment in Genesis 15. You get in there, we're into Abraham. Their stronghold city was named Jebus, which David later changed to Jerusalem. And while he drove them out of the city, he really didn't. He let some of them still stick around. And so when you don't obey God, you have lost people that they may be subdued, like the Philistines were subdued for a while, but if you don't have a complete victory, they come back at you again. And so part of the Jebusites and coming up out of there, as I put on here, Yasser Arafat. Remember him? And the Oslo Accords and back the Palestinians, and he was a leader of them. He was a terrorist. He tried it. The Jebusites were always, even though they're not called that today, they're not is what we would call Israelis. They would be, some Palestinians would call them that, and or Arabs. And he tried a trick because he was always said he was a man of peace. We just want a piece of this property and a piece of this property, not PEACE. And one time he tried, he was driving his car in for negotiations into Israeli area, and he filled his car with 4 of his top terrorists, people that had no qualms about blowing themselves up and people up. However, he got caught. And so the peace talks stopped then. That's a little known fact, but you could check it out. I think it's in Wikipedia too. But that there's always been a problem all along, and it comes right to today. Well, I want to thank you for checking in today. Some of our chapters are going to be this. Some are going to be back to excitement, the cities of refuge, putting the Levites out into the cities, and fascinated me. And I will probably highlight like I did here, and most of this will move pretty quickly, but it's important. It's scripture. And so God bless you. Thank you again. Stick with us. We're into the long stretch, into the home stretch, and we will make it.